In the quiet market town of Hexham, Northumberland, 1971 began like any other year. But by the time summer rolled around, the town would become the epicenter of one of Britain's most unsettling paranormal mysteries. It didn't involve an ancient castle or a misty moor, but a simple back garden and two fist-sized lumps of stone that seemed to carry a heavy, hairy shadow. The story starts with two brothers, Colin and Leslie Robson, who were doing what kids do, digging. While weeding their garden at 3 Redmond's Close, they unearthed two small, carved stone heads. One was boy-like, with heavy features and a skull-like appearance, often called the boy, while the other had more feminine, elongated features, the girl. They were crude, heavy, and strangely magnetic. The boys brought them inside, thinking they'd found a bit of Roman history. After all, Hexham sits right near Hadrian's Wall. But as soon as the dirt was brushed off those stone faces, the Robson household began to fracture. Within days of the heads entering the house, the atmosphere shifted. Objects moved on their own. Glass shattered without cause. But the most terrifying report came from the neighbors, the Dodd family. One night, Mrs. Dodd claimed she saw a half-man, half-sheep creature prowling through her house. She described it as a large, dark, upright entity with the head of a ram but the body of a man. It wasn't just a fleeting shadow. The family felt a physical presence of pure malice. The Robson boys' mother also reported seeing a dark figure lurking in the hallways. The heads weren't just artifacts. They felt like anchors for something that had been waiting underground for centuries. Word of the cursed stones reached Dr. Anne Ross, a world-renowned expert in Celtic artifacts. As a scientist, she was skeptical of the supernatural claims but fascinated by the heads' design. She took them to her home in Southampton to study them, suspecting they might be genuine Celtic ritual objects, perhaps dating back 1,800 years to a head cult. Dr. Ross, a woman of logic and academia, soon found herself living in a nightmare. She woke up in the middle of the night to a cold, oppressive feeling in her bedroom. When she looked toward the door, she saw a black, furred figure, about 6 feet tall. It looked like a werewolf, but with a strangely human gait. She followed it down the stairs, only to watch it vanish into thin air near the room where the Hexham Heads were stored. She later described the experience as one of absolute, primal terror. Even her daughter reported seeing the same creature, a dark, hulking shape that smelled of wet earth and ancient decay. As the story hit the tabloids, a man named Desmond Craigie stepped forward with a claim that should have ended the mystery. He lived in the same house years prior and claimed he had carved the heads in 1956 as toys for his children. He even showed where he had sourced the stone. Case closed? Not quite. Geologists analyzed the stones and found they were composed of a local Northumbrian quartz, but the weathering and the specific mineral leaching suggested they had been buried for centuries, not decades. Furthermore, the style of the carvings, the deep-set eyes and slit mouths mirrored Celtic ritual heads found throughout Europe. If Craigie had made them, he had accidentally, or intuitively, perfectly replicated a specific type of religious icon used by ancient tribes to ward off or summon spirits. As the paranormal activity intensified, the heads were passed from researcher to researcher. They were eventually handed over to a chemist for analysis, and then they simply vanished. Some say they were thrown into a river to break the curse. Others believe they were sold into a private collection by someone who wanted to own a piece of living history. To this day, the current location of the Hexham Heads is unknown. The cursed artifact trope usually ends with the item being locked away in a museum or destroyed. But the Hexham Heads are still out there, sitting on a shelf or buried in a box in someone's attic, their blank stone eyes waiting for the next person to pick them up and bring them inside. The Hexham case remains a chilling reminder that sometimes the things we dig up from the past aren't quite ready to stay buried. Whether they were 1950s toys or second-century totems, They left a trail of terror that modern science still can't quite explain. If you enjoyed this tale, please subscribe so you don't miss our next descent into the dark.